First, let's get a sense of the extent to which there has been any formal press freedom in Eritrea since it gained independence.
Well, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but unfortunately, the answer to that is no. Reporters who've been in prison since a major crackdown that took place in 2001 haven't been released, and that's why the country always lands at the bottom of world indexes that look at the press freedom in the country, and so the answer is no. And in writing, the Eritrean Constitution guarantees press freedom.
So, what really leads to the arrest and the jailing of journalists in Eritrea?
In that specific case of the reporters that were arrested and all the independent media that was shut down in 2001, the country was in the middle of a war, basically, and so that was a pretext that was used to basically crack down on independent media. So what leads to reporters being in jail is sometimes the nature in which what they report. If it's critical to the government, they are in the attention of politicians. But some of the reporters that were imprisoned, among them, wrote poets. So they were not really critical. They didn't write political writings and things like that. And so it's very unpredictable. I would say unpredictable.
It's unpredictable, and it depends on the perception of the government. Now, has there been any international efforts to have the release of those journalists who are in prison?
Yes, and that is a very good question, because most of the pressure and campaigns have come from outside the country, because it's very essentially difficult to organize or campaign or push for some sort of advocacy for those who are in jail. One example I can mention is most recently in December 2022, PEN Eritrea, which is the chapter of PEN International. It's a group of over 100 countries internationally that push for free press, freedom of speech, literature. Anyway, they got together and put together the drawings of Eritreans who have been in jail in the parliament, the British Parliament, to raise awareness. And the interview that we've done with the executive director of PEN Eritrea, he said, this is to raise awareness about their whereabouts, if they are alive, closure to their families. And so most pressure has come from exiled journalists or exiled family members who are always frustrated because they don't get answers.
Yeah, and now here we're talking about two sets of journalists also. There are those who are in prison in Eritrea, and then there are those who are forced to leave the country and they're in exile. Can you talk a little bit about those?
That is exactly where some sort of glimmer of hope is coming from in terms of getting local information in the country. Unfortunately, because there's no independent press in the country, most of the outlets, the only outlet, I should say, is government controlled. And so most reporters who have been exiled have been starting these satellite TV stations. There's one in the US, one in Europe, called Asena TV, Erisat, satellite television, bringing in an alternative to what is broadcast inside the country. And there's also a radio station in France, Radio Arena. Usually these are independent radio or TV stations. They do carry a lot of any dissent, opposition voices that you won't get inside the country. And so they broadcast back by either speaking to informants inside the country, which is the way or network of people that they've built over the years. These are reporters that have reported in the country for years and years, and so they still maintain contact, or stringers that they would find in regions to broadcast back. But that is the only glimmer of hope that you see in Eritrea that tries to fill that gap, that big gap that has been created since independence, that doesn't allow independent local media to thrive. So that's the nature in which reporters are operating at this point.
Does the government ever make, react to some of the reports about its ranking?
Yes, of course, always. They are always characterizing whatever report that comes from outside as a plot against the government. They say if you speak critically of why are these reporters in jail, or why is reporting curtailed and limited and stifled, they would say this is, external interference, and that's exactly what major politicians, including the president of the country, have said, is that they compare reporters to spies and others to basically stifle information in the country.
Really sad. We hope someday there will be some improvement.